knows which page you're on. And there are two touchscreen internet tablets. The one on the left has Elmo, who acts as a guide and a host and also facilitates the reading process and engagement of the kids. And on the right side is a video conferencing application, a custom application that's very similar to Skype in concept. And that's going to be part of the demo derby, so you really should go down and look at it. Now, as we look to the future and we look out to 2040, currently Sesame Street is in 140 countries worldwide. This story from abc.com really puts into perspective the double bottom line impact that we can have on the mobile platform. 60% of the world's population has cell phones, and the quadrupling of subscriptions over the past 7 years has been driven in a large part by the world's poor. For us, this is a huge opportunity to tap into this platform. There's a vast range of technical capabilities of these phones, so it's a challenge for us in developing content. We have to have multiple levels of this content in order to work on these phones. But our focus is really beyond just building educational content for the mobile platform. It really also is to be involved in the research and development of how these devices can be optimized for the educational experience. And at the Joan Ganz Cooney Center, we're launching the Cooney Prizes for Mobile Learning, and I believe Michael Levine will be talking about this later. But this is our approach at the workshop around really using new technology, extending video beyond just television across all these platforms for education. Thanks.
Thank you, Terry. Our next panelist is Ellen Wartella. Ellen is a leading expert in the role media plays in child development, and today she's going to expand upon our overview of media usage, but more importantly, alert us to some important concerns.
Thank you. Now what do I do? There we go. Good. Oops. Yeah, I got it. All right. Yeah. I want to tell a little story, and the story is a very simple one. It's that with every technology that's entered into American society of the last 125 years, if you go back to early days of the telephone and the phonograph, they've come with certain concerns, and children have always been concerns about using new technologies. First, concerns about how much time kids spend with them, because they're always early adopters, which all of you know who are creating new media for kids. Secondly, concerns about what kinds of content they're exposed to, and those concerns usually lead to some sort of public policy questions. And I want to talk about what's happening today and trends in the movement from one type of screen media, television, to internet and mobile screen media, and one type of public policy concern which has to do with the commercialization of children's lives as a consequence of commercial content in these media. So the story I want to tell is not that plus ça change, plus ça même chose, that things are always the same, but that we should be aware of what's coming on the horizon of concerns about kids and new media, particularly concerns about marketing. And those concerns are going to be raised very strongly in the coming year. First of all, to look at trends in children's media use. We've already talked about it. You spend more and more time with screen media. Secondly, concerns about what kinds of content they're exposed to. And those concerns usually lead to some sort of public policy questions. And I want to talk about what's happening today and trends in the movement from one type of screen media, television, to internet and mobile screen media, and one type of public policy concern which has to do with the commercialization of children's lives as a consequence of commercial content in these media. So the story I want to tell is not that plus ça change, plus ça même chose, that things are always the same, but that we should be aware of what's coming on the horizon of concerns about kids and new media, particularly concerns about marketing. And those concerns are going to be raised very strongly in the coming year. First of all, to look at trends in children's media use. We've already talked about it. You spend more and more time with screen media at younger and younger ages. Parents think it's really fine to put 6-month-olds in front of television screens as a way of getting them to advance educationally. Television is still the dominant media use, and here I'm going to give a plug again. Vicki left the room for the Kaiser Family Foundation report that's coming out on January 20th. I use their studies to look at how kids and families use media, but television has been the dominant medium since it entered American society by the late 50s. And thirdly, increasingly used media time is mobile, and it's part of multitasking, and a lot of this mobility has to do with moving from television boxes to other screens through which you can access both television, movies, and different kinds of communication information. Data from 2 different studies by Kaiser in the late 2000s, one 0 to 6 study and the original Generation M, shows pretty clearly the increase of mobility and the increase of the importance of screens in children's lives, and I won't belabor the point. More importantly, in the Pew Internet studies that they've been doing on the internet and teenagers, there's some pretty good data of how important the internet is to teens, and I just give a bit of an example here. So, point 1, screen media are an incredibly important part in every younger children's lives, and those screens are moving from the television set at home to a variety of mobile devices and accessing it through the internet. Point 2, that the context within which children use screens is the context of what we're concerned about in the larger society. So I want to bring up the questions of what are occupying people's concerns about kids today. One is, if you haven't heard, we're in the midst of a childhood obesity crisis. 16% of children under the age of 17 are obese today. Another 15% are at risk of being obese. Almost a third of American children have huge problems which will lead to later health problems, and it's a public health concern that's #1 among children's youth. Secondly, there's been an enormous growth in the last 10 years in the science of adolescence. We're learning new things. Those of you who have adolescents know that they like risks, that they're influenced by their peers, they do the opposite of what you ask them to do, and they're putting their lives at risk. Adolescents have high mortality rates, and we're concerned about that, and we're learning more about the nature of decision-making among adolescents and how competent they are. And we're beginning to question whether they're as competent as much of public policy today thinks they are. And lastly, there's considerable concern today about the new kinds of marketing techniques that are available online specifically for adolescents and that are targeting minority youth. Do we have a question here of equality across different groups and the way that they're being marketed to? And what is this marketing environment? These are concerns that are being shaped in the larger culture that are going to come and impinge on the media culture. The current regulatory environment is also a carryover from the television era, when research was done primarily in the 70s that demonstrated that children have to come to learn to understand what the purpose of a television advertisement is, that first they make discriminations between ads and programs on TV based on who the characters are and what they look like. Thus we have bumpers discriminating and telling the kid when they're going to see an ad versus when they're watching a show. And that up until about age 12, this develops, but by the time kids are 12, they pretty much can identify what is an advertisement, what its purpose is, and therefore it's been thought that they're appropriate to advertise to. So whatever regulatory regime we have around marketing practices is not geared at all to older kids, is only geared to those who are too young to understand what's called the persuasive intent or selling intent of advertising. And it's been thought that it's only a problem given the concern of distinguishing between the editorial content and the advertising content. Well, we're in a whole new environment today. New kinds of concerns are coming up. One concern, because of the childhood obesity crisis, is concerned about the unhealthy foods that are marketed to children. If we had lots of fruits and vegetables and milk being advertised to kids, we wouldn't have this concern, but that's not what are marketed either on TV or in the online environment. In particular, there's growing concern that online marketing and the kinds of techniques it uses, viral marketing, user-generated, embeddedness of marketing messages, may be problematic not just for kids under 12 which we thought of in the television environment, but actually for adolescents as well, and that it preys on those particular vulnerabilities that we know adolescents have. Their desire for risky behaviors, their desire to be popular, their desire to be connected. And lastly, there's growing concern about the targeting of minority youth and minority communities for unhealthy foods, for the lack of fresh fruits and vegetables in their communities, and the ways in which we may be preying on that community. These marketing concerns